Gamer798377 is now following. Explorer is now following.
Yo, what is up everybody? How are we all doing today? Hold on. I was looking back at a lot of my recordings. I would notice that my audio, my mic at least, it peaks a lot. Let me just like reduce the audio output a little bit. Hopefully that's a little bit better now. 30 seconds early, unbelievable. I'm sorry guys. You know, maybe I should just come like 30 minutes late next time to compensate. Also, Haku, what do you mean 5 minutes early? I was on time, at least for me. You gotta realize that whenever I say 1 hour from now, I mean on the hour. Yeah. So far, my break has been pretty good so far. I wouldn't really call it much of a break though, because I've been working on some stuff for JEI. Yeah, I pinged at 7 minutes after the hour. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. It's always going to be on the hour. But yeah, my break has been going pretty well so far. I've been working on some stuff for JEI while off stream and went live. You might want to check your clock, or maybe our clocks are just not synced. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, most of the stuff that I've been doing off stream, yours is 11:05. Yeah, mine's is 5:05 for me right now, or 5:06 now. What was I trying to say? Yeah, there's not gonna be many, what's it called? There's not gonna be many streams with JEI for the next little while, because I'm still gonna be taking quite a while to improve JEI while off stream and whatever. So pretty much you guys are just stuck with me in all of these reaction streams for the next while, I guess. I don't know. I kind of felt like I just wanted to say that. Because it's like, I don't know. It's been a while since the last time we had a JEI stream, no? Yeah. Unfortunate. Unfortunate shadows. Y'all are stuck with me. But yeah, it's been a week. It's been a week since I've had to do anything for school, really. And actually, it's been a week since I've had to do any coding, really. I don't know. I've kind of been needing this break. But anyways, today we got 2 articles in for today, unless any of you are submitting anything right now. One of you submitted the latest chapter for Blue Lock. I see you. we are not reading Blue Lock on stream, at least not this stream. But we got 2 more articles. One of them was from last stream. Actually, no. Did we already go through this one? I think we went through this one already. Yeah. This is the Psychophony one that we went through. I forgot to cross this off. Cross it off now. And then the next one that we have is actually one that we picked up from that article, and I put that in myself. Wait, who did that? Let's read it. We are not reading Blue Lock, bro. But that chapter is a nothing burger. Actually, nothing goes on in that chapter. Yeah, let me turn down the music a little bit because I can't even think straight. It's going off. Okay. I have no clue what this article is about. I have no recollection. But if I put it in, then it's probably always something interesting, right? Oh, bro, what the fuck? Okay, there we go. So this is about Numinex. I have no clue what Numinex is. You know what? Should we pull up the other article and try and figure out what it was? This was what we read last week. Or not last week, like half a week ago. Do we have anything about Numinex in here? Numinex. I think that applications like Henry's Numinex, which encourages public discussions of LLMs, could be part of the solution to this. Right. Oh, wait. When did we talk about OpenAI's open source model yet? Cloud user makes her blog use a warm text color and a serif text or serif font. Actually insane. Yeah. I just realized this. Yeah, you're right. This isn't actually white. Off-white. OSS. Yeah, GPT OSS. It's like, what the fuck? I've seen, I haven't played around with it myself, but I've seen like a couple people, or at least a couple photos of people trying to use it. And it's like, whenever they prompt it to try and do any sort of instruction, it's like the thinking for the GPT model is out there in the actual response. Like, yes, the user is asking me to do this request and I am asked to fulfill this request. However, doing so would lead to misinformation. Therefore, I cannot actually answer it. So here is my response. Exactly. Lie to me? Nope. It is part of their safety. And I literally reading through all of the stuff about GPT OSS, it just reminded me of this exact article, which is kind of crazy because it's like all of this talk about model safety and all of that shit, right? I didn't think they were actually taking it that seriously, and then like OpenAI just throws that shit out, and it's like, okay then, I guess they are actually trying to take that shit seriously. But at the same time, with how they've approached doing it, it seems really shit. It seems like we've like adding safety, sure, but it's at the expense of absolutely gimping the capabilities of any of the models, right? And I think it's less that OpenAI want to make a safe model that complies with all of the new safety standards, but rather it feels like they just did it so that they can get a model out there for publicity, and then and then not actually give the community a proper usable model. I feel like it's all just a publicity stunt. Did you see the meme I made? I did not see the meme you made. Actually, maybe I did. I don't recall though. Oh yeah, the one in general? Yeah, I saw that. Bro, I'm not fucking... I am not... I refuse. I refuse to bring back plugins, no matter what. Not for the next 10 years. The reasoning block is basically just a song and dance around the policy. What do you mean, the policy? I ask it hi and start panicking about explicit behavior. Bro, hi? Any kind of introduction? That's too vulgar. You can't do it. Safety, aka lobotomize it? Yeah. They lobotomize it like crazy. Kitten TTS? Wait. There was also... Is Kitten TTS the one that I'm thinking of? There was like this other model, TTS model, that's like 24 megabytes that I recently saw on Reddit, but I never gave it a try myself. Kitten TTS. I don't think it's called Kitten TTS. That's Kitten? I don't see the repository. Oh, it's just a paper? Or no. Oh, okay. Hugging Face repository. Let's give it a try. Kitty, meow, meow. Voice selection? We'll do a male, because sometimes it takes a man to be best girl. Here we go.
Kitty meow.
Okay, fine. Here is a proper sentence to say. Like, is 20...
Here is a proper sentence to say.
Oh, it keeps cutting off the very end of it. Maybe if I cut this down to just 1x speed, it'll be fine. I don't expect it to be very good.
Here is a proper sentence to say.
It keeps cutting off the last token. I don't expect it to be very good, but it's just cool to see a model that fits within 24 megabytes. Like, this is the kind of stuff that you can run pretty competently on a CPU at the very least. It only runs on CPU. It only runs on CPU? Ah, I thought at the very... I mean, why would it only be able to run on CPU? I guess they don't really make use of any GPU acceleration, but I don't know. I don't know how they built this, but it's pretty cool to see that people are experimenting with 24 megabyte models. I don't know how many parameters this is, but I wonder how far we can really push these tiny models. They're cutting off the end of it actually. The fix is to add trailing dots. Oh. Let's try this.
Here is a proper sentence to say.
Okay, okay, can we get our kitty kitty meow meow? Because if you uncut the
Titty
end,
titty meow meow.
this is so cringe. Can we try a different model? There's only like, okay, the only things with this model, 15 million parameters, okay, that's pretty cool. The only thing with this model is that I haven't seen any resources on how to fine tune it. I don't know if it's possible to fine tune it. And it comes by default with, I thought it was supposed to be 24 voices, but there's only like 8 here. What does the female one sound like?
Titty titty meow meow.
Bi female is an actual anime girl, by the way.
Titty titty meow meow.
I can hear it. I can hear it. Why did I say meow meow like that, bro? It's infectious. It's infectious like that. Kokoro and Mellow are faster on CPU than this actually, even though they're bigger. Okay, they're probably missing a lot of optimizations. Yeah, they're most definitely missing a lot of optimizations that would make it compatible with something like Kudo or Rockem or whatever. Honestly, I don't even know how that's possible if you're using something like PyTorch, but if they're just building it from scratch with like, I don't know, C++ or whatever, then maybe. Can I see the actual repository for this thing? Like, hello? Hello? Yeah, this is two guys that started working on this 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Okay. It's pretty impressive. Oh. Are these my files or the... Oh, this is their files. Okay. Python. Is this... And they don't provide anything in terms of like source code or whatever. It's just a model. Just the model weights. Unless if I'm able to get rid of the spaces thing. It's an Onyx model. They do provide source code. TTS. It's their GitHub repo. I tried searching for a GitHub repo, but I couldn't find it. Kitten TTS GitHub. Oh, I think I found something. Is this it? That looks right. Yeah, okay. Kitten TTS, open source. Alright, alright. Let's see the requirements. The requirements is very lean because it's an Onyx model, right? I was gonna say maybe we could try replacing Mellow TTS's library or Python module with just a basic Onyx runtime, but honestly, just kind of overkill. Maybe in the future. It does lean down to dependencies quite a bit, but at the same time, it's like, is that really necessary? Release fully trained model weights, release a preview model. Yeah, works literally everywhere. That's true. Okay, so very early in development. I'm excited to see when they actually release the fully trained model weights. So that way we can actually try fine-tuning it and giving it a try, right? Because I mean, audio quality isn't the best, let's be honest. But the fact that it can pretty much run everywhere is kind of interesting. I'll probably still stick with Mellow though, and maybe I'll give Kokoro a try because they are also runnable on CPU. But I don't know. I just kind of like hidden TTS. Seems very, very interesting. Mello can do Onyx, but it also makes exporting fine-tuned voices very extra painful. Apparently the 80 million will be way better. I mean, if this one, 80 million compared to 15 million, of course it would be better, right? TT, Kitty TTS. Yeah, my only reserve with trying to, well, I haven't really thought about it yet, but the only reason why I haven't really done Onyx runtimes for anything inside of Project JEISON so far, well, I have tried it once, but at the same time, there's just a lot of pain when it comes to trying to export models for certain use cases, right? Especially for stuff like RVC or what's it called? Or like Mello TTS, right? Fine-tuning a voice and then telling people, oh, you gotta convert to an Onyx model before you can actually make use of it inside of Project JEISON. It's just like an extra step that really doesn't need to be there at the moment. And especially with stuff like text-to-speech models, I feel like a lot of text-to-speech models, at least their interface, their inputs aren't the same across every single model. And so it would still be better to have, it still wouldn't make much of a difference to have a separate, or to make use of a universal runtime like Onyx, when you still need the specific, I guess, pipelines or the data processing pipelines to convert your text into whatever inputs is required for, like, the Mello model, for example, right? You would still need the code from the repository anyways. I don't know, that's just a side tangent. Anyways, Numinex, this is what we were actually gonna read today. And this is, I guess, more on the topic of, what is it? AI safety, but more specifically on the topic of loneliness and isolation when it comes to talking with AI models and all that stuff, right? So from this article that we pulled it from, I think that applications like Henry's Numinex, which encourages public discussions with LLMs, could be part of the solution to this. So basically, it's like sharing of each other's LLM conversations, right? I'm pretty sure I even read recently that if you have any conversations with something like ChatGPT on the ChatGPT web interface, and if you hit share on those conversations, your conversations actually get indexed. And what that means is people can find your conversations with ChatGPT on Google search, for example, which is kind of crazy to think about. I don't think that's intended behavior. No, it's about being able to have LLM in a group chat. Did I get it mixed up? Because there were two parts to it. One was having the LLM in a group chat and assisting in a group conversation, and another one was literally the sharing of conversations on a forum so people can correct what is being said by the LLM. So a long part of Midjourney's trust. OpenAI and other labs have also forums for experts on the topic. I don't know, at least from what I'm reading inside of this paragraph, it seems to be like sharing of conversations that people had with their LLMs, right? But yeah, there was, I did touch on or like talk about that idea in the previous stream, where I feel like the direction LLM should be taking, if we don't want a dead internet in the future, is to have LLMs joining like proper group conversations where the main person you're talking to isn't an LLM, but rather a group of experts where an LLM is just a tool within there that people can use to kind of break a deadlock or something, or maybe to inspire new ideas or to kick off a conversation or something, right? I kind of mentioned this in the last stream as well, where basically people overly relying and vibe coding with like Gemini or whatever is also kind of gimping the future development of these larger LLMs, because it takes away the resources from like, it takes away the feedback from getting actual solutions in a forum from something like Stack Overflow, and also takes the resources off of the internet and rather privatizes them, and also doesn't have the follow-up like feedback as to whether the solution actually worked or not, right? So we end up getting all of the new information or the majority of the new information that's being come up with nowadays, or stuff like coding and whatever, is mostly going to be like conversations with LLMs. And those conversations with the LLMs most of the time will not have like the actual solutions or the feedback on whether the solutions worked or not, or something like that. I'm gonna go watch anime, enjoy seeing whatever not you say this person has slopped themselves into. Alright, man. Limit the forum has been updated. Let's see. Okay, thank you, Haku. Okay, why'd you accept the blue lock chapters, man? But there's ChatGPT's introduction of their GPT OSS, and then what is this? Fine-tuning. I want to learn. You want to learn about fine-tuning? I can teach you about fine-tuning instead. But you know what? Fine. Okay, let's read this article. We've stalled for long enough. Looks like it shouldn't be too long of a read. Okay, Numinex. What has Henry cooked up here? Henry D. Valence. I enjoy talking with AI models. They are extremely and increasingly intelligent. They have an incredible and unexpected capabilities, and through the magic of in-context learning, they reveal those capabilities through interactions with humans and each other. But for all of this, they are stuck in products that are remarkably poor tools for thought. Okay, so this guy, kind of a different take from what I see it as, but he's saying LLMs are actually smart, but we're putting them in bad contexts, which actually hinder their ability to be beneficial in the long run. Which is kind of like the opposite of what I think, but let's see. As a user, I can get Claude warmed up to think about some problem over the course of a chat, okay? And get some interesting results. And then the chat ends, or the context is polluted, and that's the end. It's not meaningful, accretive. Ooh. People always use most like convoluted words. What does this mean? Accretive. Characterized by gradual growth or increase. Okay. It's nothing meaningfully accretive. I can easily reference specific points from one conversation into another, or even find them again later. I can't pull on different threads, take different paths, compare different prompts. I can't pull on different threads, take different paths, compare different prompts. I mean, okay, I never used Claude before, but a lot of LLM tools, at least the locally runnable ones, you are able to do this. Like I forgot, there was one tool specifically that allows you to like start different branches in a conversation, or like to save snapshots of a conversation, and then you can still also swap out like your system prompts and whatever. So I don't know what this guy's talking about. When was this published? Also 2025, relatively recently, like last month. If a model takes a wrong turn, I can curate the context and prevent it from being stuck with its mistakes. I can't share specific messages to my friends or colleagues, or let them continue the conversation I started. Again, kind of a platform issue. You can do this with LM Studio. I know that for a fact. I know I've learned interesting ways to elicit behaviors from models, but it's very difficult to share the tacit knowledge that comes from large time investments in solo player practice and exploration. Okay, sure. What I'm getting from this, or at least the vibe that I'm getting this guy sounds like a vibe coder where he's like, you gotta start prompting now, or else you're gonna fall behind. You're not gonna know how to prompt 10 years in the future. When you start learning 10 years in the future, it's gonna be too late. That's like kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this. And I don't know what else is out there because I can't watch how other people interact with models. I mean, okay, within the context of something like a web interface, something like ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these like online models, where most of your conversations are being held on the internet, and you have no way of saving or restoring conversations or whatever, I can understand this sentiment. But otherwise, with a lot of these locally runnable tools, this kind of is not the case. I believe a root cause for this and other tools is that there is no verifiable, persistent, and composable record of human to AI interactions. Moreover, this absence causes problems well beyond suboptimal AI product experiences, problems that will become more acute as models become more capable and take on a larger share of society's reasoning. When thinking together moves out of the sphere of public reason into siloed one-on-one chats, our pre-existing, I don't know why he has it accented like that, our pre-existing problems of low trust in societal institutions and fragmentation of shared reality get much worse. Instead, we need both an open data layer with clear provenance information, as well as user-aligned agents that can help individuals navigate it and tilt the balance of power away from coordinated information operations and back towards individual autonomy. Okay. In the longer term, such a data layer could serve as a grounding system, providing adversarially robust sense perception about the state of the world to future models in a way that is not possible for a single company to build or control. Okay, yeah, so this is basically what I was talking about last time as well, right? Where the kind of concern with conversations with a model being private to that particular company. And so we start like monopolizing on information where information isn't out there publicly for all models to train on something like Stack Overflow. But now it's like, okay, companies have run out of information on the internet. Everything is now being done through these AI models, through the web interfaces. Gemini is not going to have access to all of ChatGPT's conversations, and ChatGPT is not going to have all access to Gemini's conversations. So you basically have these silos of chats, these silos of one-on-one chats, and whichever company has current dominance over, say, the coding space, the LLM coding space, they're going to continue to get further and further ahead because more and more people are going to be interacting with their models for the specific purpose of coding, and so they have more data to train on. But like I said as well, it's also not going to be like directly going to be the case like that because, well, people aren't giving back the feedback or whether these results are even good or not. So there's also this sense that we are generating a lot more slop and we're running out of high quality data as a result of everybody relying on LLMs, right? And I guess that's kind of the sentiment he's also stating here. Anyways, as a small but concrete way into thinking about this, I've been working on an experiment called Numinex. Numinex is a natively multiplayer open world AI chat system. Bro is making this sound like a fucking MMO. MMO chat GPT. That would go so hard. Numinex differs from an existing AI chat systems in a number of important ways. Numinex presents as a branching comment tree akin to old Reddit threads, rather than a linear chat interface. This remains familiar, but allows exploring different prompts and continuations. Numinex is natively multiplayer and multimodal. Any user can continue other users' conversations by creating their own replies and select which models they wish to engage with. I mean, it can get a little bit annoying if you want to have like focused time trying to talk with an LLM and other people are trying to like interject with your conversation. But like in general, I think this is a much needed change. Yo, I'm back. Welcome back, S16. Numinex allows users to curate context and gives them tools to do so. Okay, let's see. Most tools focus on helping users add material to the context window. But the most important skill in curation is exclusion, not inclusion. Numinex is designed to give its users a clear mental model of exactly what is in the context window at all times. What is this about? So, this is basically like on the topic of AI safety. There's this kind of notion that having conversations just be one-on-one between a user and a LLM is kind of dangerous in the sense that it can provide a lot of misinformation and devoid the conversation from human interaction. And human interaction isn't just for the sake of like, oh, you need to learn to talk to other people, right? It's more for the case of grounding the LLM's responses, as well as clarifying any sort of misinformation or hallucinations. So what this guy is doing, this Henry guy, he's basically made this application called Numinex, which allows multiple people to have a conversation with a singular LLM. Kind of like if I were to put J.A. Eisen into the Discord server, it would be like that, right? All of you are able to talk with J.A. Eisen, and J.A. Eisen is able to engage in the conversation as well. But this guy had a little bit more stuff on top of that, which is less related to safety, but more just for like, oh, he was missing these features in a lot of these LLM platforms, which I'm just going to say skill issue to him, I guess. Numinex is designed to give users a clear mental model of what exactly is in the context window at all times. That's just kind of skill issue. Numinex is public, open, and composable. Built on the AT protocol created for Blue Sky, all data, user messages, prompts, generations are recorded as verifiable records with content address referencing. Again, this is less related to AI safety and more related to just whatever he chose for his architecture. This prepares for the near future where the cost of custom interfaces goes to zero, but the problems of data interchange and provenance remain. I don't really understand this point, but okay. Perhaps subtly, but just as importantly, Numinex represents AI generations prompted by a user as artifacts of that individual user, rather than as posts made by an account representing the model. Wait, what? Perhaps subtly, but just as importantly, Numinex represents AI generations prompted by a user as artifacts of that individual user, rather than as posts made by an account representing the model. Oh, okay, I see what he means. So basically, it's like Blue Sky or X or whatever. Instead of giving the LLMs their own accounts, like Grok has his own X account, Claude has its own X account, let's say, and instead of saying whatever the replies they give belongs to that account, instead, these accounts no longer exist, and say, I limit ask Grok for something. Whatever response Grok gives, it's going to be associated with me, the account limit, and not Grok. So this encourages users to think of models as tools they can engage with deeply and individually. So this basically makes it so you as the person that's engaging with the LLM, everything that you get back from the LLM is still, it still belongs to you, right? It belongs to you and not Grok or whatever. So I guess it kind of puts the onus onto you. That everything that's generated and whatever is not by Grok, but by you. Observing the much more interesting and surprising model personalities that would be obscured by asking the model to roleplay as a particular chatbot. Wait, how the fuck is this gonna work then? I mean, I get it, like, instead of training models to be assistants, generic assistants, and trying to respond as generic assistants, you're trying to respond as generic anybody's, right? Like continuing the next line in a script where you could be any kind of character, right? But the thing is, I don't know. It kind of feels like you're training models to be that person now. And so you're trying to replace people with models. And if that's the case, then I don't really see what the purpose of even having an LLM in the conversation, what that even brings to the table anymore, right? Because the whole purpose of LLMs in the present day is that they are assistants that people can talk to, and they are basically their own entities. I don't really see what benefit we would gain from having these chatbots be someone else or be generics. I don't know. Numinex. Numinex is live now and you can play with it. Can we actually play with it? Numinex. Numinex. This guy doesn't link it anywhere. He doesn't link Numinex anywhere, and I can't find it on Google, I'll be honest. Rest in peace. I don't think it's a thing. Currently, it has only basic features focused on multiplayer prompting rather than search, feeds, or discovery, but it's already useful enough for me to display some of my use for the Claude and ChatGPT apps. At this stage, it's a bring your own key model only, so you'll need an Anthropic or OpenAI API key to get started, as well as a Blue Sky account. Is this on Blue Sky? I have no fucking clue, I'll be honest, okay. Whatever, that's fine. How does it work? The basic atom of Numinex is the post. Posts contain text and optionally embedded content, such as other posts, links, or text gists. Posts can trigger responses by AI models. These responses are recorded as posts by the user who triggered the generation, with metadata indicating the model was used, or what model was used. All data created by a user is recorded in the user's AT protocol, or no, proto-PDS. I have no clue anything about Blue Sky's AT protocol or whatever, so this is kind of lost on me. Personal data store. Then indexed and compiled by the Numinex application view. The rule for context inclusion is simple. When a post triggers generation, the context window for this generation starts with a customizable system prompt. Includes all messages in the thread from root to leaf, and does not provide any side branches. However, each message in the thread recursively includes all of its embedded content. Thus, material can be brought into context by quoting it up thread of the generation. I don't see how, okay. Maybe he's just talking about his application and how he's doing things like automatically, but this is kind of just like what you would normally do with an AI model anyways, right? You're talking to ChatGPT, it forgets something, you scroll back up into your context, you drag something out and you paste it again. It's like, hey, yo, you forgot about this. And that's basically all this is doing, right? This is basically the same thing here, but I guess he's doing it automatically. For instance, a post linking to an article brings that article into context. A reply to that post with a quote of a link to a second article brings that into context. To visualize context inclusion when viewing a post, the UI uses a linearized transcript view of its parent posts, displaying the exact contents of the context window, and switches to a branching tree view of its children. Okay. That's just UI stuff, displaying the different paths of the discussion it could take next. Wait. When viewing a post, the UI uses a linearized transcript view of its parent post. So this is just a normal script or a chat template, displaying the exact content of the context windows, and switches to a branching view of its children. I don't understand what he means by this branching view of its children. Perhaps he means like, I don't know, a summary of whatever's in that branch, acknowledging that those branches exist, but doesn't really like dive deep into it. Oh, no. It's a linear view, so the entire chat history is there, yes. But then the next generation is like a choose your own adventure, right? The next generation, you can pick out what response you want to give next. You pick it, it uses that as the next response, and that gets added to the history. All the other options, they're just discarded. Something like that. Okay, this structure seems to work well, at least for me. Consider the use of linking to an ArcSiv paper and discussing it with a model. The link tool recognizes ArcSiv links and pulls a snapshot of the text source into context for my root link post. I can read through the paper and write notes in replies. Each time something is unclear, I ask the question in a new reply and have a clean context with just the paper contents. I can explore different branches at different times while still remaining reasonably efficient in terms of prompt caching. And I can cross-reference posts in different threads as I go to augment the model's context. If I want to refer to another paper, for instance, I can just link to it and pull its contents into context for that subtree of discussion. There's not really much interesting to say about what he's doing here. I mean, it's cool. The concept of this application is cool, but I don't really think there's like much application to it besides the fact like, oh, he's just making a better way of organizing conversations with an LLM, right? And there was supposed to be this whole point of it being multiplayer, but so far it doesn't really seem like that's the case. Well, maybe it's just there. I don't think he has enough users to really make it a multiplayer thing. Also, I just don't really feel like a multiplayer setting would work well in this case, or at least in his example, because it's like the topic that he's diving into is very isolated. He's studying a paper, right? He doesn't really need other people like chiming in or whatever as he's taking his notes or something like that, right? This isn't really much of a conversation that needs other people, but rather just using an AI as a note-taking assistant or a summarization tool or whatever. I don't know. I'm just gonna skim through the rest of this and see if there's anything interesting, but doesn't seem like it. Filing Numinexes makes multiple intentional decision to record and present model outputs as records recorded by its own. At the same time, models have fasting emergent behavior underneath the URA mask. When it comes to roleplay, these are somewhat. There is so much beauty and complexity to explore. I don't really think there's much else to this. Okay. Interesting idea, but I don't think this is really relevant to us. I'm sad that you can't really find Numinex on the internet though. By the way, Limit, I have a question. How did you make a good enough data set for JAISIN? I don't understand fine-tuning, and the first I tried understanding is how I can make a good enough data set that doesn't have a specific personality or tone. Were you the one that submitted the fine-tuning? Were you the one that submitted this? Fine-tuning guide? Yeah, you were. Okay, let me just take a look at this. Data set preparation, starting fine-tuning jobs, blah blah blah. Data set preparation, conversational data. Okay. Okay. I can talk about this. I don't need this manual. So what do you mean by a good enough data set? Like, what are you trying to achieve if not a specific personality / tone? Are you trying to fine tune, or are you trying to train from scratch? Like, you've just coded the model architecture, you have 0 weights or 0 checkpoints, and you're just training up the data. Fine tune, you're trying to fine tune. And so what you need to understand is there are multiple stages to AI training, right? And fine-tuning kind of comes after you do all of the initial training from scratch. And so, how can I describe this? Let's pull up VS Code really quick. I'm not going to do any fine-tuning, I just need like a text pad. Okay, so basically, when you have a model, it first needs to go through like pre-training, right? Pre-training, and then there's like the fine-tuning stage. This is just a very basic overview. There's like other training stages as well, but these are like the main ones that people normally focus on. When it comes to pre-training, the objective of this is just to learn the English language, or to learn the language, right? Basically, like sentence structures, if you were to run a model without pre-training, it would just generate a bunch of gibberish, right? But after pre-training, you end up with some semblance of words, kind of like chat, hello, there, and shit like that, right? But these aren't actual sentences. These aren't coherent sentences or whatever. Maybe they are coherent sentences, but there's no coherent ideas. There's nothing really there that really makes it a usable assistant or usable quote unquote personality, right? And so the purpose of fine-tuning then is to kind of guide the language. So instead of going from chat, hello, there, you are now like giving it some order for how it should generate its tokens, right? It's learned the tokens, it's learned how to structure words and sentences, but now you wanted to give it some purpose. So you could have it generate hello there chat, and now that sounds a little bit more proper, right? But I know what you mean. This is like not exactly what you're asking. You're asking, how do I make an actual data set? And so what you need to realize is that anything can be a data set, right? Anything can be a data set for fine-tuning, but you need a specific structure where it allows you to easily parse or include metadata. And what I mean by that is for chat templates, right? For chat templates, let's say let's say you're training an instruct model, right? Alpaca, the alpaca prompt. Let's see if we can get an alpaca prompt. Can we get it? Yes, here we go. This is the alpaca prompt, right? Basically, every single one of your instances look like this. Let me just turn on word wrap. View word wrap. Every single one looks just like this. You will have some sort of instruction. You are J.E. Eisen. You are a Twitch streamer. Blah, 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 blah. And then you'll have some sort of input. Chat says, hello. And then you'll have a response. Hey, chat. You'll have something like this. And so these parts will always be constant. These parts will always be constant. What gets changed out is your instruction, your input, and the eventual response. And so what your LLM is learning is to generate a block of text that looks exactly like it would inside of here. If you need to understand that LLMs are simply text generation machines, right? They take a single block of text in, and then they generate the very next bit of text out. And so you can lop off this entire thing, but because it's so used to seeing all of this text followed by all of this text, even if you lop it off up to here, it's going to learn that it should then generate an S, then the rest of this text, and it continues to generate off this text. And so one of the problems that I had with J.E. Eisen when I was fine-tuning her was that I had something that looked like this, right? I had something that looked like this. And so there's no real good way in which we can embed or separate blocks and know when to stop generation and all this stuff, right? It's not gonna know. The LLM doesn't inherently learn that it learns that it is J.E. Eisen, right? When I train it with a script like this, the model learns both this line as well as this line. It's not going to learn specifically and only this line, right? It will learn to impersonate me as well as learn to impersonate J.E. Eisen. And so it will kind of pick up both of these personalities. It just depends on all the text that comes before it. So once I remove this, it should try and generate whatever J.E. Eisen would say. But if I were to remove all of that, then it would try and respond with whatever I would say, throw down J.E. Eisen's line, and then start generating J.E. Eisen's line. Basically, the problem that I'm trying to say is that there's no semblance of what makes a good data set or a good prompt or not. Well, okay, no, there is an idea of what makes a good prompt or not, but all LLMs are the same in this manner, where all they are doing is just trying to generate the next word, the next token, regardless of where they are inside of the prompt. And it can even try generating the prompt, right? But what you do by reusing the same prompt over and over and over again, right, is that it learns to understand this structure, and it starts to learn which parts of it starts to learn the patterns of what it should be generating. And so if you have it so it always finishes with a new line, you can tell your LLM engine to always end with this new line. So you would always need to have this new line at the end. But what I'm trying to say is basically all you need to do is just be consistent, right? Be consistent and varied in what you put for something like the instructions, the input, and the response, right? Whatever you put inside of the response in this case, this will kind of match the tone or personality of what your LLM will eventually output. But everything else in the inputs, they can be whatever. You just need to make sure that something like the instructions and the inputs are varied enough such that when it comes time to actually start doing generations or to swap out the instruction and the input prompts, right? Once it comes time to actually swap those out, the LLM will actually pay attention to those sections of text and actually make a response in accordance to that. Because you've already reused this part of the text so many times, it already knows what to do, right? It's gonna completely fucking ignore this. So you can but the thing is, you shouldn't, if you've trained with this block of text inside of there, you shouldn't just delete that, even though it's redundant, right? Because now it's missing that initial block of text and now it's confused as to what to do because it's never ran into this scenario before, right? So what you can do, and what I think you should do for when you're making a good data set, number one, remove all of the unnecessary tokens. This is unnecessary. Below is an instruction that describes the task, blah, 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 right? This is unnecessary. You do not need that prompt there. What you do need are headers separating instruction, input, and response. That way the LLM kind of knows what each block of text is supposed to represent, right? I understand that this is supposed to be instructions, this is supposed to be input, and this is supposed to be response. But if I remove all of that, now what the fuck? Where does my instruction start and end? Where does my input start and end, right? Then your LLM will get confused. It will continue generating something like the input and never actually finish its response. And you'll end up with cases like that. I've seen it happen before. So first of all, remove all of the headers. Second off, have clear borders between your blocks of text. So we can say for here, end inputs, end inputs, end instructions. And instead of having a new line here, you can have end response. You can now make use of this as your stop sequence. So whenever you see end response, you stop all generation. And this is much better because now you can't end up with a case where, but previously we just had a new line, right? But what if it starts doing something like this, right? It starts putting a new input, and then it throws down your next input, and then it does end inputs, and then it generates a new response. This is not good. This is not what we want to see, right? This is bad behavior. So we kind of want a better, more unique way of blocking off the beginning and ends of each section of text. And so instead of saying end input, I would even just say end, right? This is much better. So every time we see end, we would stop. If we give it only this, then maybe it'll generate something, it'll throw down end, and then it'll stop generation there. It won't go down to and try and generate the response, right? That's fine. But in saying that, this was specifically in the context of instruct models, but this also applies to like chat conversations and whatever, right? It's just that these headers will look a little bit different. So I believe what share ML or the open chat template does is like they do user start, and then they have the user's name like limits, and then they keep going until they reach an end block, right? Or maybe they even just throw this inside of, actually they throw this here, right? Doing some sort of markup, and then in here this would be assistant. Right? And now they can kind of interleave it. And this is completely fine because, well, when you give this conversation to the ML, you can chop it off up until here. And now it will keep running until it sees this end block, right? Goes down to end block, boom, your generation has finished. So that's just a tidbit about prompting. And the fact that whatever prompt you choose doesn't matter. You just need to make sure that you're consistent with the prompt format, and your prompt format does have a good distinction as to where each block of text starts and ends, right? That's the first thing. When you train your new AI model, try with Qwen 3. I think it's really good and people also like it. I have only tried 4 billion, 8 billion because I can't run bigger models. Qwen 3 is a thinking model though. I mean, you can disable thinking, but I think most of the people that are getting good results or liking them are simply because of the thinking protocol it has, right? That's another thing. That's another thing I want to say. You can technically turn any model into a thinking model just by fine-tuning it, right? Just like how before we had this alpaca prompt, right? Let's go back to the alpaca prompt. It's not like there's anything special with this prompt, right? We can easily turn this into a thinking prompt or a thinking model. We can easily turn any model and fine-tune it into a thinking model by doing the following. I'm going to modify this. I'm going to modify this prompt and I'm going to put in thinking. And that's all I'm going to do. So inside of my data set, I'm going to have varied instructions. I'm going to have varied inputs. And then I'm going to have a block of text that does some sort of reasoning, maybe in a different tone, like this is my very smart and logical thinking. And then it's going to give the actual response. Aha, response, right? You can give this and tell a model to fine-tune it, or you can fine-tune a model using something like this, right? And then you can have at the very end, right? Just to specify that this is the last of your, once you see this, you stop generating, right? So then at runtime, what you can do is basically just give it this. Now it's going to see this. It's going to recall back to all of the instances it's seen prior, where it's seen a block of text followed by this response header, followed by the response in a different tone, and then the end header. It's gonna be like, oh, pattern recognition. I see all of this. I've seen this before. I've played these games before. And now it's going to start doing its very logical thinking. And then it's going to generate to the response header, do a nice response, and then it finishes at the end. So it's done its thinking. You've seen the response token, so you can use this to kind of start tracking the response. You get the response and then you have the end, right? Basically, you can really change the behavior of an LLM through fine-tuning just through the structure of your prompt. There is no hard-defined rule as to what needs to be an input and what needs to be an output, right? It's all just a block of text in, and then whatever you get, whatever blocks of text you get out, you can parse that however you want. Reasoning enables an inner loop on which a response is proposed and then evaluated before returning it to you. Is using the test time compute paradigm. That's not how thinking models work though. That's different. You can have recursive evaluation, but that's not a thinking model. A thinking model is specifically a model that has a thinking block before it begins its response. And all of these LLM engines, all they're doing is just letting the LLM run its thinking block. It'll see the response block start, and then whatever it gets from the response block is whatever it gives back afterwards. The thing you're describing is inference time testing or whatever, or just whatever kind of evaluation. It's not a model itself, right? This is the model itself. What you're explaining is an architecture around the actual model, which isn't the same as when we talk about reasoning inside of models or thinking inside of models, right? Reasoning is just like whatever, how smart or logical or good the logical reasoning capabilities of a model is, okay? And then thinking is whatever this is. That other thing you described is more for like recursive evaluation of a LLM's response. I don't remember the name. There was a specific name for that, specific design pattern, but it's not exactly what we refer to when we say reasoning or thinking. Yeah, I know thinking mode that they all call it is not really thinking, but if you want a better response and have time to wait, it is good. Yeah, so whenever a company or a LLM provider says something like, oh, we're giving the LLMs more time to think, right? What they're really saying is whenever they're fine-tuning their models, they're making this block of text way, way, way bigger, right? So that when your LLM in inference time sees this, its neurons start firing, and then it will start thinking, okay, I've seen this pattern before. I now need to start giving some very logical output, but this very logical output is really, really, really long. And so it starts spending more time thinking for really, really long because it's spending more of that time generating tokens in the thinking block before it finally generates this response header, and then it generates the actual response, right? So you can kind of like gauge, or you can kind of tune, quote unquote, how long a model thinks for just by how big these thinking blocks are inside of your data set. And that's really the thing about the data sets, right? All of this is just referring to prompting, but what about the actual contents of the prompt, right? Like I said before, what the model is learning when fine-tuning is what the text should look like, right? It's not practicing with a specific prompt. Well, it is practicing with a specific prompt, but it's memorizing what a output is memorizing what a block of text should look like, right? So it's going to memorize what sort of instructions it can expect to get. It can memorize the format of what the inputs would look like, the size and tone and kind of ordering of the words inside the thinking block, as well as the same thing for the response, right? It's not going to learn to use this prompt any better than it would if you're like fully fine-tuning, lobotomizing it, whatever, right? So that's why I say you can get rid of this starting block because it's just redundant tokens. You don't need this. All you need are just these headers and the blocks in between. And so in each block of text, then you can format the text however you want. It's just that whenever the LLM encounters a specific sequence, it's going to have pattern recognition to try and mimic what it previously saw in those blocks. And so whatever you put inside of your instructions, you should try and make this consistent with how you plan on making instruction prompts in the future, right? What you shouldn't do is have this be a static kind of prompt, right? You shouldn't be like, you are an assistant, and then have this for every single one, right? Otherwise, that's redundant. You can just get rid of that because it's not learning anything from that. What you would instead have is maybe you would have you are an assistant, you are a student, you are a streamer. You would have like streamer. You would have varying instructions prompts, right? And so that way, when you eventually go to runtime and you swap this out with you are a developer, then it will pay attention to the fact that this is different. This says developer instead of assistant, student, or streamer, and it will pay attention to it because, well, that's kind of like what has been changing and what went into influencing the rest of the text, right? You can even like get rid of all of this. You can just say role and just like chop off the rest of that because that's redundant as well, right? And so this is kind of what we mean when we say you're able to reduce a lot of the tokens that you would otherwise need when it comes to fine-tuning. Because now we're no longer fine-tuning an instruct model using this instruct prompt. We are now fine-tuning our own unique kind of model, right? I guess now in this case, this is a role-playing model because we're giving it a role, and then we're probably going to give it a script or something. And then we could format this with whatever script we want, and then have the actual response down here, right? And so really the key thing to be doing here is to make sure that your training data, whatever data set you're using, your training data needs to look like the scenario is going to be used for, right? We saw the outcome of me using my own custom templates, but with misaligned data, right? I was using Discord data instead of streaming data. And so what you ended up seeing during that stream like a month ago or whatever, is that the responses J.E. Eisen was giving was not the best, right? They sounded a lot like Discord conversations because that was kind of the conversations that she was given. So whenever she encounters this response block, she's going to give like a one-liner, be like, see ya Haku, right? When what we really want is a more verbose response if you want something like a streamer, right? So instead of saying see ya limit or see ya Haku, you could be like, damn, Haku's going to sleep. Bro was smelly anyways. A much more verbose response. And so your LLM will get used to generating much more verbose responses. Verbose responses? I thought you were going to sleep, bro. Get out of here. It will get used to generating much more verbose responses whenever it encounters this response block, right? I was going to screenshot it all. So what I'm planning on doing for J.A. Eisen is I need to make a chat template, right? So what I'm currently planning for the chat template is you have, well, user, end user, and then finish. Then you would have the name in here, or user content. No. I haven't really thought about how I'm gonna format my template yet, But it's basically going to be something along the lines of this, right? So basically you can have a lot of people like S16, Haku, and then we can have context in between, context. And you could also have, and then you would have the response, right? I would train it with a template that kind of looks like this. That way the LLM has information, has a way of understanding that when it sees this, whatever comes next will be a name. And then whenever it sees this, it will be actually the content related to whoever is associated with what was previously said here, right? So this ASDF, this belongs to limit, right? This ASDF, this belongs to S16. This ASDF, this belongs to Twitch chat, right? And then whenever it encounters a response, this is what it itself is going to say, right? So, hey, it's your girl, Jay Ison here. And then it'll have finish. And then that's the end of that response, right? This way, my LLM knows what kind of tone it should expect or it should be trying to generate for each of these blocks. It knows how to associate this, this string of tokens with whatever is inside of the contents here. And it knows how to base its response based off of all of what was being said previously. The other thing is that how am I going to generate this, right? First of all, I need my own generic data set, right? You can find a lot of these or even make a lot of them. I made my own for using the Discord data, but you just need to parse out information from a data set, right? You need to get the user that's talking, if that's relevant to you. You need to get the actual contents of what's being said, if that's relevant to you. And then you need to also get a response or a thinking block or whatever. You just need to collect information with enough metadata that allows you to create these sorts of data sets, right? So the data set that I have for Jay Ison for that old stream that I did, let's see if we can pull it here. This is, I need to zoom out. No, this is not right. Okay, wait, let me just pull one of these though. This is not the best example, but fuck it. Okay, and this is, I need to unword wrap this. So this is, oh my god, this one's massive. Oh right, I know why. Okay, fine, that's fine. This is the this is the data set that I'm kind of working with. Well, no, the data set that I'm working with is just like a block of text, right? But I can probably show you that actually, maybe, hopefully. I would need to pull up my different folder for that. Data sets, Discord. It's a JSON. Kaggle Discord, v3, content, drive, share drives, data sets, clean v3, detox, no spam. Okay, this is what the data set that I was working with originally looked like, right? You would have a name, followed by a colon, space, whatever contents was being said by them, and then a tab, right? this was the information that I was working with. And then you just have to like, each data set will be different, right? Some of them will be formatted into nice tables. Some of them will look absolutely dog shit like this one. But what I basically did was I made a script that goes through that entire conversation and parses it down into some nicely formatted information, right? So I ended up with a data structure that has like the conversation with an array of names and to their content, right? So if we look at this array here, I can't really prettify it, but this is effectively what we have, right? And then the content. And then you get your next guy. And so on, right? I basically formatted this shitty data set into this. A much nicer, a much more nicely formatted data set, right? Something that pairs the name with the content and whatever, right? But this isn't a data set that we can use to train something like JAISIN, right? Unless if you want JAISIN to output JSON, and then you would parse that JSON and whatever. I don't fucking know what you would want to do, but this is not something that you would typically use directly as the input to something like a fine tuning, right? Instead, what you do with this is you take the information from each of these kind of like blocks, let's say, right? And we have another script here. This script kind of parses out the information from here and puts it into the chat template that we were originally talking about, right? It formats it into something like this. And so what I have here, I believe I have, I outputted this into a different format. This was system user response prompt. This is the correct one though. No, this is also not correct. Where is it? Jamit Discord train, fine tune local. Yes, this should be it, right? Okay, here we go. So basically, we have our alpaca prompt here, right? This was the exact same one that I was kind of using as an example this entire time. What this is doing is taking the information out of those JSONs and converting them into the format that I'm going to be using for JAISIN, right? In this case, it was the same format that we use inside of the prompter inside of Project JAISIN, right? And so it's going to give the instruction prompt much in the same way as it does for the kind of instruction prompt you would have for Project JAISIN here. It would also take the input from the user prompt. It would take the output from this response. And what it would do is it would insert them, it would format them as one big block of text for your LLM to be trained on. And this is what your LLM sees. It does not distinguish between the fact that, oh, okay, I have this parameter that's response, right? I have this parameter that's input. It does not take in a JSON of information. It takes in a block of text, and it starts to memorize what that block of text should look like. And then at inference time, it will try to create something that looks like that block of text. And so, yeah, I feel like I explained that like absolute shit. But basically what I'm trying to say is, just make your data set look exactly like how you plan to use it inside of your actual use case, and understand that the data that your model is being trained on is just one giant string, and there's nothing special about that string besides how you format it. So how I plan on making JEISON's next dataset is first of all, I need a relevant dataset, right? We've seen the results from the Discord dataset. It wasn't that great, right? It was more for Discord conversations than it is for anything else. So what I need is an actual conversation dataset where JEISON is talking like a streamer, for example. And so what I need to do is I can use something like LM Studio, for example, and kind of curate my own conversation using JEISON and then storing those into a dataset. That's one way of getting a very basic dataset, right? Like I can have a conversation with JEISON here. Maybe JEISON doesn't produce something I like, so I can just replace this with a much longer response. Save that, and then I can continue the conversation with this, right? And it will respond as though it had generated this. This is one way to get around the fact that, okay, you need to make a dataset, but you haven't actually spent the time to fine-tune a model, let's say. Another thing that you can do is just go to ChatGPT, change out its system prompt to try and roleplay a different character, and then have a conversation with that. Maybe you can build out your own application, text the model, text your like very bare bones fine-tuned model on Discord or something like that, and then save whatever information is being responded or being inputted into its own data set. Again, it can literally be anything. It can look like slop like this, and then you can parse it out later, right? All you need to do is just to get relevant information that looks exactly like what you want it to look like, right? Don't go halfway, because trying to build or iteratively improve a fine-tune can be a very time-consuming process, but this is a more direct shot way of just getting a good quality data set that you can immediately use for something like streaming, right? So that's one way, making a synthetic data set by talking to an LLM and using its responses to make a data set. Another way that you can do is just looking up people or media or works in the field related to what you want it to be, right? If you're trying to do creative writing, you can get data from creative writing works. If you wanted to mimic a streamer's, you would maybe transcribe streams and then use that as your data set, for example, right? Again, you just need it to be formatted in a way that matches what you want it to be, and the data also needs to match what you want it to be, right? In this case, if I have it like this, if I were to train it on streamer data, then I would need to replace every response that I wanted to respond with. I would need to replace the names being put in here. If this was like, hey there, Neurosama here, right? I can't just do this. Otherwise, JEISON will then... Holy fuck.
Hey Limit, try adding JSON to your Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot to help you with code. I think it will be funny to see what she will do. Also, she may blow some of your tokens.
Yeah, I thought about that, and that's like something I do not want to do. What I was going to say is, if I train it with a dataset, and like if I were to train it with all of Neurosama's streams, for example, right? And I don't take the effort to swap out the responses. If I don't bother to swap out the names into responses, something like, this was Beetle. Neuro, do something. The problem here is that now JEISON is going to learn that its name here is Neuro, and is going to try and mimic the fact that, oh, it's playing the person of Neurosama, right? Where it's going to always be referred to as Neurosama and stuff like that, right? You need to take the effort to, if you're not going to state the actual name here, right? You need to take the effort to switch this out to like JEISON. You also, otherwise, you can do something like this, right? Where you do response, name, neuro, and then now you can have this remain as neuro and this as neurosama. So that way, it will always know that whenever it has the name of neuro, then it will recognize itself in these conversations as neuro or neurosama, right? But then the moment I change this to J. Eisen, it will get confused when it sees something like this, right? It's not going to be neurosama, it's going to be like J. Eisen here. And this also makes it a lot easier. So that way, if you go to another VTuber, right? If you were to say Hilda, and this is waifu dev. Now this also works as well, right? You can have both of those instances in your data set now. Beetle, you can have neuro. And you can have these two be different instances. But this will work out. It's not going to get confused because it knows to differentiate the responses and the contents of what's being said based off of the name that it has here, right? So again, that's just minimal amount of information. It needs to differentiate blocks of text, like I was saying earlier. And so that's another way that you can approach it. You can just take actual works from the internet or gather your own data as long as it's actually relevant to the use case that you're going to use it for. And then you need to format it into a template that will resemble what you're going to use in production and provides enough information to actually get all of the inputs that you need to make a proper response based off of the data that you trained on. And what else? What else? It's going to be very hard to create...
Everyone calm down, please. Professor Limit is talking about fine-tuning AI models. If you don't want to listen, please leave the stream.
Okay, buddy. I don't think anybody was complaining. But what I was trying to say was it's going to be hard to get such a specialized and curated data set right off the bat, right? For something like Discord, whatever, it's going to be a lot easier because, again, there are data sets that exist, right? So the first thing you would do is actually see if a data set exists out there. If there is, someone has already done the majority of the work for you. Just look through the data set, make sure that it actually is what you're looking for, and then make use of that, right? If it's not, then it's going to be really hard to make a data set right off the bat that matches what you're trying to go for. And so I would work on it little by little, right? First of all, start off by creating a smaller data set that kind of matches what you're trying to go for. And then using that data set, you can go off and try and fine-tune a OpenAI model with different prompts and whatever, and then use your conversations with that fine-tuned OpenAI model to then generate your final data set to train on your local model or whatever, whichever one you have fuller control, right? Because with a template like this, you won't be able to fine-tune a GPT model with any sort of template, right? You have to follow the GPT template, which is like system prompt, user prompt, and then response. Or like some series of this, right? You cannot escape this sequence. You cannot escape how they're formatting their chat templates and whatever, right? You cannot have your own custom thing. You're just locked into it, but that's fine, right? You just make a separate data set specifically to fine-tune your GPT model, but you're not going to use that data set to fine-tune your final model, right? It's just an intermediate data set. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have to be the same formats. It's just something temporary. Is there anything else? Yeah. I would say once you get to around, it's going to be a lot, but I would say at least I was gonna say at least 10,000 lines of conversation between you and the LLM, but I realized that that is a lot. And yeah, that is a lot actually. They can't be like the same conversation either. They need to be unique conversations because again, like I said earlier, this is effectively the same as giving it this, right? It's gonna learn all of this as well as everything below that. It doesn't really matter. You need to give it unique conversations. So this would need to be one distinct conversation, this would be two distinct conversations, and this would be two different data instances. I started noticing very, very, very good results after 10,000 sample points, but that will take a very long time if you're trying to manually interact with the LLM and check all of those stuff, right? I know inside of OpenAI's docs, they do say like, oh, just test it with like 15 or so instances, right? But that's only because the format that they're using is the same no matter what, right? And so even though you're fine-tuning, quote unquote, the OpenAI model, your OpenAI model will still be using OpenAI's chat template. And so it's not much of a stretch to shift how the LLM responds from one tone to another if it's following the same kind of template. But the thing is, what I was saying with the 10,000 instances, the 10,000 instances is what you need in order to lobotomize the model so it forgets how to use its chat template and then relearn a new one. Yeah, no, 5,000 to 10,000 isn't that bad. 5,000 to 10,000 is asking for a lot, at least in the way that I'm going to be making it. I know the dev really cooked with the fine-tuning. Gathering 5,000 to 10,000 data points for simply fine-tuning is a lot of fucking effort, especially for an individual, if you're not automating anything. I tried doing this with Character AI, and it felt a lot like ChatGPT. I'm not really familiar with how OpenAI or ChatGPT does their things, but I would assume Character AI is using role-playing models, right? But the thing with role-playing models is that they are kind of similar to instruct models in that instead of a system prompt, they maybe have like a role or personality prompt. And then everything else is the same. Maybe they have a scenario prompt. So basically exactly the same thing like what we have for JAISIN. They'll maybe have a lore book, and then you have everything else, right? It's going to be very similar, and they're probably not going to let you fine-tune it with custom templates either. It's always going to be the same template for whatever they use. But this is just kind of like one of the wins you get for doing things locally. You have full control, right? You have full control. You can make whatever template you need for your purposes. You can fine-tune for whatever purpose you need. Can't you direct ChatGPT to output example conversations the way you're doing it? Yes, you can, but again, AI slop, right? You slop in, slop out. You're asking ChatGPT to generate something that it itself doesn't have a good idea of how to do, right? Like, why do that when you can just ask ChatGPT to try and roleplay or try and mimic the personality? Why are you even fine-tuning in the first place if that's the case, right? The thing is, ChatGPT and all of these other LLMs, they don't actually know how to talk in the way that you want them to talk. And so whatever resulting data sets that you do get, sure, it can follow it can output something that has the same conversation template. Sure, it may be able to output the JSON that you can use as a data set, but the quality of the responses and the quality of the actual conversations, they're not going to line up, and you're going to end up with something that sounds more like ChatGPT than you do with something that actually sounds like the personality you were trying to go for in the first place. How do you get examples for fine-tuning AI? Or how to get examples for fine-tuning AIs is to make a program spider that collects chats from popular streamers, and boom, we have something totally legit. That is a totally legit solution, right? You can totally make a data set by transcribing people's streams, right? You can make a fucking AI model that that talks exactly like me based off of all of my streams and all of my VODs, right? If you just transcribe whatever I'm saying, you can turn that into a model, and that's like whatever, right? That's totally a legitimate method. But the thing is, what was I gonna say? The thing is, it really depends on if being a popular streamer is the personality that you're trying to achieve with your AI. If you're trying to achieve like fucking, I don't know, an AI girlfriend or whatever, you wouldn't be crawling through popular streamer chats or whatever, right? You're probably like crawling through, I don't know, erotic novels or whatever the fuck. I don't know what you're into. But yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's the same kind of idea. Just collecting data in one way or another that is relevant to the domain that you're trying to replicate. Is there anything else I wanted to mention on that point? What do they say in this manual thingy? You just wanted to know how to make a data set, right? Not actually on the fine-tuning process. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, when you mentioned a good enough data set that doesn't have a specific personality or tone, I'm just gonna say that you can't really achieve a data set that doesn't have a specific personality or tone. If you're even like looking at something like ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these other neutral, supposedly neutral sounding models, they still have a personality, right? The best you can really do is just inside of the responses, vary the response as much as possible. So it's not always positive, it's not always negative, it's not always happy, it's not always sad. You just need to give it a good variety, and then it will never have a go-to personality, right? It will always shake up its personality a little bit in some way. Maybe you could say that it averages out and it becomes a very neutral personality, but I guess neutral personality is still a personality, right? At the end of the day, your model will always have a personality or tone. It's just dependent on, I guess, what occurs the most often inside of your data set. If there's no particular personality or tone that occurs the most often, if it's well varied, then I guess that's as best as you can get to a neutral personality. But it's much easier to fine-tune and create a personality than it is to neutralize a personality. Okay, for your example of Twitch female streamer, maybe you download big streamers and put them through voice to text model and write it in text file. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by transcribing big streamers, right? And that's exactly what I said earlier. Dataset prep. Okay, Okay, this dataset prep is very specific to OpenAI's format, right? This is not, again, not the text that you're actually training on. This is just inputs to a template. Let's do it. Chop, chop. You know, maybe when I finish everything else on my plate at the moment. Like, you don't understand. Sure, I finished school. Sure, I do have time to sleep now, at least. But that's not to say that I've had a lot of free time, to say. I mean, I did take a very nice break over the weekend, but ever since coming back from the weekend, I've just been non-stop working on, I've been non-stop working on the next video that's going to be coming out soon. Just a very quick video, because, well, 300 hours of refactoring is very hard to make entertaining, and there are so many like subtopics within those 300 hours that I want to break out and give their own dedicated videos later on once I actually finish what I'm doing right now for current JEISN changes, right? I guess I can tell you videos about fine-tuning, videos about making datasets, videos about prompting, and videos about TTS. Those are minimum 4 videos. There might be more videos that come up, especially once I start preparing on stuff for version 3.0 for Project Vita, but there are a lot of videos that I need to get done right now. And also, I need to finish a lot more stuff for Project Vita and Project JEISN before I can release those 4 videos. So in the meantime, I'm just making a very quick, like 300-hour summary, right, of what happened and why I thank God for 5 fucking months from Project JEISN. Yeah, the rest of this is just like, whatever. This is not really important. Yeah, anyways. 2 hours. 2 hours is not bad. Anyways, I will see you all on Saturday. We're gonna be having, oh my god, another coding stream. It's been how long since we've had a coding stream? But don't worry, this one is going to be not as complicated, I hope. Or at least if I'm lost, if you're lost, then I'll be just as lost. Yeah, we're gonna be having a coding video. We're gonna be playing around with vision models and making a little toy project that takes whatever is going on the screen and putting it into text. And that's gonna be something that I put into JEISN eventually, hint hint. But aside from that, plugins come back, plugins never come back. You know what? Instead of plugins, you guys get MCP servers. There you go. Anyways, I'll see you all again on Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'm gonna go back to editing videos. So see you. Farewell pipe. I'll see you next time.